All right, we're gonna talk about getting set up for bench press. A lot of times we try to find the most minute detail that's going to allow us to bench more weight. There is a time and a place for that. Some people are just going to be so good at bench press that we're only gonna need to change small little details to improve it. And I'm guilty of that myself too, is that I'll look at some of my lifters and we try to find the most smallest details when a lot of times we just get away from the most basic shit, right? So I wanted to make this video and actually talk about getting set up for bench, where we want to feel tension, and really what we're aiming for. I know different federations have different rules as far as your heels being up and heels being down, so I am going to cover the differences between the two of them. It's really not that hard of a transition to go from heels up to heels down. All I ask, if you watch this video, you find some kind of value, do me a favor and just share the video, right? That's all I ask. If you got something out of it, you feel like it can be beneficial, do me a favor and just share it. If you don't like it, don't watch it, that's cool, right? If you do enjoy it, please share the video. So, getting set up for bench it's not complicated, but it's definitely not as simple as what people make it out to be. When you're done with a bench set, you should be sore. I've seen some people be short of breath because we're generating that much tightness. So if you just lay down and you do your bench and you come up and nothing's really sore, you don't feel anything, you're probably not getting set up correctly. So big things that we want to ensure that we're doing is, and I'm gonna go through all of this, scapular depression, so we're getting our shoulders down. We want to drive our heels into the ground and drive ourselves backwards into our traps. And bench is probably the only movement where I actually like the knees out cue. I fucking hate the knees out cue for squats. I do feel like it's got some pretty good carryover on bench. So, when we're actually getting set up, and I meant to say this too, it's worth noting, this way that I'm going to show on how I get set up, this is not the best way to do it. This is not the only way to do it. The best way to get set up for bench is the way that you can do it, where you will generate the tightness where you need to. This is just how I tend to get set up. The rules apply all the same. As long as we feel tension where we need to, you're good to go. So, the first thing that we want to do when we're getting set up is make sure, obviously, we're grabbing the bar evenly, right? It sounds simple and, common sense, but I've seen it not be common sense for some reason. So again, using this line here, right, and then the knurling, and we're just making sure that everything is set nice and even. For most people, that's going to be either one of your fingers on this ring, or you're going to use your thumb in line with the knurling to find that grip, whatever. Grab everything evenly. Once you grab it evenly, we are squeezing the absolute piss out of this bar. I've seen plenty of lifters unrack it and we're just kind of like half holding onto it. Squeeze as hard as you possibly can. We want to lock everything in, get tightness all across the body here. So we're squeezing as hard as we possibly can. Once you grab that bar, what we're then going to think about, regardless of your grip width, is pulling that bar apart and trying to bend the bar at the same time. If the cue bend the bar doesn't work for you, I made a post a while back on my Instagram about a cue called open the door. So if you're gonna turn a doorknob, right, you're gonna turn your hands out. Same rules apply. We're thinking about opening the door, turning our hands out, creating external rotation through the hand to create some torque in our elbows to allow us to bench more weight. So again, grabbing onto that bar, pulling it apart, bending it, opening the door, you'll feel your lats really tighten up. Your chest will actually raise up some as well. Holding on and maintaining that rigidity throughout. We don't want to lose it on the way up. We don't want to let everything go. We don't want to stop pulling the bar apart. Continuing to pull apart as we open the door the entire time, really engaging our upper back and our lats. All right. From here, what we're trying to do, right, so we've got our grip, everything's nice and tight. I'm opening the door, right, I'm exaggerating here for you guys to see, right, I'm turning my hands out. So I'm creating that torque in my elbows, I'm pulling that bar apart. We want to get set onto our traps. Some people like to think about getting set on their neck. No matter how you think about it, what we're aiming for is getting those shoulders pushed down as hard as we possibly can. Now, some different ways you can do that. I've seen some people do the, we're gonna pull ourselves up this way and then push everything down. I've seen some people do the underhand, you're gonna pull up and then get set this way. It doesn't really matter. I actually prefer to just slide backwards. So after I've got my grip, I will actually just slide myself backwards so that my shoulders are pushed down. I'm set on my neck, and then I'll kind of just walk my scaps down just a little bit more, really pushing everything down toward my hips here. You can see my chest naturally elevated. I'm not trying to set an arch with my lower back. I'm simply getting my shoulder blades pushed down as hard as I possibly can. Do not try to arch in your lower back. It's completely counterintuitive. You're not actually going to do anything. Get set and push your shoulder blades down as hard as you possibly can, and your body will end up with whatever arch it's just naturally going to have, all right? So, I'm holding on to the bar, right? I've got my grip. I'm squeezing on really tight. Thinking about pulling that bar apart. I'm, bending the bar here. Everything's nice and engaged. I'm getting set onto my traps here. Again, really pushing everything down, walking them in, putting my hips down. Now, if you have a problem with your feet being uneven when you set up for bench, this is where either A, having a coach, or B, having a reliable training partner who actually knows how to be a training partner, and that's a whole different fucking conversation. If you have a problem with your feet being uneven, you may want to consider setting your feet first. Some people will kind of get set on the bench, get their feet here, and then bring themselves under and go from there. That is totally fine. If you don't have a problem setting your feet and getting them even, you don't need to do that, all right? But once we're set, everything's super tight. Again, I'm not gonna go through all the steps again here and reiterate. Everything's set. I'm driving on my traps here. What I'm going to think about is pushing down into the ground with my heels and driving myself backwards this way, like I'm trying to slide myself off the back end of this bench. This is the one time where I do like the cues knees out. I hate it for everything else, but it works really well here. So everything's super tight, I'm driving back, and then I'm gonna think knees out as I push myself backwards, again, driving my heels down, and I've got a really strong base here in my legs. Everything is super tight. I got a lot of tension through my whole entire body right now. I'm sure you can actually, if you pay attention, you can hear the change in my voice when I'm laying down there, because everything is so super tight and locked in. Now, a big problem I see on the actual unrack of the bar is people will either A, put the rack height too low and you end up basically doing a press to get the bar out, or B, what happens is when we unrack, we lose all of that tension we've just created in our upper back. All I want you to do is think about basically dragging this barbell right over top of this J-hook, just dragging it over just enough to clear it. And as we do that, we're going to tuck our lats in even tighter. So I'm still squeezing, I'm still getting that torque in my elbow, and I'm gonna think about tucking my lats in even more, trying to get even more scapular depression. The movement is very similar to what would be a straight arm pull down, which is why I love straight arm pull downs as an accessory movement. We're thinking about tucking everything in, again, keeping the chest high, getting those lats tucked in super tight. So don't push the bar out and completely lose all of that tension. Think about dragging that bar clear over top of that J-hook, right? So again, everything is super tight, right? I'm generating all that tightness, right? Scaps down, walking everything under here, dropping everything. I'm pushing with my heels, driving my knees out. I've got all of this tension, and I'm going to drag this bar over top, right? So again, all I'm doing is basically just pushing enough to clear it and then drag this bar over top. And I'm really tight through the lats here. Everything is super engaged. Down, down, straight back up. What we don't want to do on an unrack is get all of that tightness so everything's super engaged, everything's really tight, and then go here and drag out. Because you can see I just lost all of that tension in my upper back that I created when I tucked everything down, and then I pushed this forward and I've lost tension. In a super exaggerated way of thinking about it, if we've got our shoulders really pushed down and I push up, I'm going to go into a little bit of shoulder protraction. Now, I don't personally fall into the category of we need to have our shoulders retracted and depressed. I like to just think about scapular depression, or getting the shoulders down toward our butt more than we need to retract. That being said, what I don't want to do is protract and completely flatten everything out. If I go to unrack and I end up pushing this bar out and I protract my shoulders, even if I'm not thinking about retraction, if I'm neutral but I protract, I had to lose tightness somewhere in order to pull that off. The idea of bench is to be super tight, right? Again, I know on bench, a lot of people just think, I'll just lay down and do it. But if you're gonna hold 300, 400, 500 pounds above your chest, you're gonna want to be as tight as you possibly can, or you're asking for a bad day, all right? So again, when we unrack, we're thinking about just enough to clear, really tucking those lats in as we go on. Everything is super tight, get engaged. I've got all my tightness everywhere, and I'm going to drag this bar straight out. Now this rack height's a little high for me, right? But I'm going to drag it out. Everything is tight. I'm keeping all of that tension as I bring this down, back up top, down, and then back up top. And then when we're done, obviously, we just come up. Those are the things I think of when we're getting set for bench. Now, I lift in a federation where I can have my feet tucked under me and my heels elevated if I want to. I just choose to have my feet flat because I like it better that way. If you bench with your feet tucked under you, which I do have some of my lifters do, the same rules are going to apply, except we're going to think about one minor change. All right. So I'm still getting set here. I'm getting everything nice and tight. All right, I'm kind of getting everything. I'm still going to drive everything back, except I'm going to have my feet back here. So instead of out in front of me, I'm going to have my feet back. And I still want to generate tightness here. I'm still walking my scaps down toward me. But from here, as I'm still squeezing, I'm pulling that bar out, getting that external rotation, creating that torque in my elbow. I'm going to think about pushing my heels down toward the ground, and I'm still driving my knees out to the side. A common problem I see when people bench with their feet tucked under is when we drive our heels into the ground, your ass comes up off the bench, which we all know, if your ass comes flying off the bench, it doesn't count. So as you're driving those heels down, we also want to think knees out. So I'm still pushing myself back into my traps, pushing backwards, but I'm driving my heels down and I'm pushing my knees out to help engage my glutes to keep my ass on the bench. So if you bench with your feet under you and you feel that you have this problem where your ass keeps coming up, drive the knees out as well, turn everything on, and that's where you'll create your tension. So it looks something like this. Right, everything's all set, we're getting our feet tucked under us here. I'm kind of sliding in, walking my scaps down. I'm not just shimmying. I'm trying to push each of my scaps down toward my feet a little bit more each time. I'm pushing my heels down, driving my knees out, all of that tension. I'm in here super tight, down and back up, down and then back up the entire time. Some things to think about. You'll notice whenever I get set, I have my feet on the bench. That's where I start. You don't have to do that. Some people will naturally just kind of, again, start with their feet on the ground, walk yourself under. I know another popular way is to do the kind of the swing yourself under, get set here, kind of look where you want your feet, and then bring yourself under this way. That's totally fine. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. We're just trying to create as much tension as we possibly can as we go through the motion. I'm sure you can hear I'm short of breath because I'm just sitting here creating all of this tightness. So you can imagine if I'm just creating this tightness and all I'm doing is benching the bar, you get through an entire bench workout, you should be pretty fatigued. Those are the things I think about whenever I'm trying to get set up. That's what I tell my lifters to focus on. Again, we're trying to create as much tension as we possibly can. The goal is to just get uncomfortably tight when we're doing this, because when we are uncomfortably tight, that's where we're going to have the most power. If you lay down and your feet are moving around and you're really loose, you're not going to maximize your bench press. You're also risking a really bad day, dropping that bar in your chest, right? Just get completely fucked up. Not to say that you can't potentially get injured doing this, right? Because there is danger in this sport. But if you are not uncomfortably tight when you get set up, you are risking even more damage. Again, that's what I think about. That's what I tell my lifters to think about. So give that stuff a try. If you found it helpful, let me know. If you have any questions, drop them down below. And again, if you found any value in this, if I gave you some stuff to think about that maybe you didn't think about prior, do me a favor and just share the video. I would greatly appreciate it. As always, if you guys have any other things you want me to cover and talk about, drop them down in the comments below. More than happy to help everybody out. My goal is to make everybody better powerlifters. Powerlifting has changed my life for the better, right? It's done a lot for me, and all I want to do is give back and hopefully pass all of that on to everybody else. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns about programming, technique, anything like that, please feel free to reach out. That way I can help you out. I'll talk to you guys soon.